Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited to dive into this office hours, both to learn all about how to successfully raise a pre-seed round, and also because a core goal of Dreamers and Doers is to amplify you and your journeys. And one of the ways we achieve this is by facilitating game-changing educational events that give us all the opportunity to up-level together. So before we officially begin, I want to share a bit of background information on our esteemed expert. Brooke is the founder and CEO of Allobee, a one-stop business solution to help the overwhelmed entrepreneur scale simply. Brooke raised a pre-seed round of $500,000 in 2020, as well as raised funds for a brick and mortar co-working space in 2017. She has helped hundreds of founders with their pitch decks and pitches over the last few years so that they could successfully raise the funds they needed for their businesses. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Brooke. We are so excited to learn from your expertise today. We know how valuable your time is, and we're so grateful to you for investing in D&D in this way.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. And I am excited to chat with all of you today. I feel like it's only fitting that I have had 2 investor pitches this morning. So, and into this afternoon. So I feel like I am right in it of having really be present in all of this fundraising endeavors. But I'm really excited to share with you just my experience in fundraising for a pre-seed round, answer as many of the questions that you might have. Sorry, just trying to get this to present. And give you some actionable tips to kind of take you to the next level to get you done with this pre-seed round or wherever you're at if you haven't started to fundraise yet. Some things to really think about before getting into raising it, as well as things to kind of keep you moving as you continue to raise in the future, because kind of once you get on this bandwagon of raising, you're kind of stuck on it, which is good and bad in its own right. And I really believe that it's important as women to pay it forward, especially when it comes to raising funds and supporting other business owners. People have supported me and shared their knowledge along the way. And so I'm glad to be able to share that with each and every one of you. I will leave plenty of time for questions, as well as Hannah let me know a bunch of the questions that you guys submitted. So I made sure to kind of like wrap around that and answer a bunch of them. This is not my prettiest deck because I definitely put it together somewhat at the last minute. Because I wanted to make sure I got all of your questions in, but you'll get them answered. And I promise to send you away with some really great tools, as well as some great places to look for investors and angel investors, and how to write an email to them, all of that kind of stuff. But a little bit about me. I am a mom of 2, which they might run in at some point, because I was telling Hannah that our afternoon childcare is not available today. But hopefully my husband will wrangle them in. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. We live in Durham, North Carolina. I have been a member of Dreamers and Doers for a little over a year now. I think it is. It seems like it's been longer, but I love this organization. We have a lot of clients that have come from Dreamers and Doers, as well as a lot of people that I know and really respect. So it's nice to be in the same room as many of you today. I'm a super big book nerd, and so you can always find me reading a book when I'm not working on this company that I'm building. And then I'm really mission driven. I came from a nonprofit background before I got into tech. And so I'm really focused on building a impact driven company that is helping to get small business owners support for their business, as well as women getting paid as freelancers for flexible work. So that's a little about me. I wanted to answer your questions because I think that when we come to fundraising, especially for a pre-seed, there's so much unknown. There's a lot of information out there that is not applicable to the pre-seed round, that's more applicable for later. And so it's kind of hard to sift through, as well as there's so few dollars that come to female founders. And it's real and it's hard. And so I don't want to sugarcoat it because I want you to be aware of it, and the journey that goes along with it. But I also have learned some hacks and some ways to kind of push forward, and get to the finish line of raising. So if you are a complete novice to raising, that's something I'm not going to go into tons of detail. Like if you just have no idea if you should raise or not, glad to answer any questions on that. But I'm really going to stick to getting this raise ready and done, and getting to the finish line. So my suggestion for you is if you are considering raising anytime in the next 6 months to a year, and if you haven't done this, it's okay. But start connecting with people before you even have to. So start talking to investors and people that can connect you with investors and angel investors and all kinds of people that have money, that they're wanting to invest in, different companies for. Also talk to potential, people in your network, like dreamers and doers and others, that you could actually start connecting with and telling your story of your business and your traction, so they can see it over a period of time instead of just when you're going to pitch them with your pitch deck to get money for it. That was really helpful for me when I raised our first round, was that I had been talking about it for a year and a half before I went out to raise. And so that set me up for a lot of success because people already knew what we were building, how far we had gone in a short period of time. And even though we had only been live for 3 months before we started raising, we were able to show traction prior to being, live, just off of the conversations that I had had. So that was really great to have that already happening. A lot of times we don't have the luxury of that and we're just need to go start raising, and that's okay too. But know that it's probably going to be a longer process than you think it's going to be. So it's rare, and I don't mean to burst bubbles, it's rare that you're going to walk out of a raise in less than 5 months of work. Our first raise, we started raising officially started having conversations in August. We actually officially closed January 6th of 2021. And it took a while for us to get all the checks in, all the commitments in, all the documents signed and all of that. And so for us, it was something that took a bit of time. But it doesn't mean that it can't take less time, but just be prepared to invest that time over a 4 to 5 month period, where you're going to have a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations and sending a lot of emails. So make sure it's at a time where either your business you have a business partner or a team that's already helping to support with it in some way, that you're not going to have to be 100% present all the time. I know that's really, really hard to find that space and time to do it, but we chose to do ours right after the launch had already happened. The crazy 3-month first part had occurred, and then we started to do our fundraising. Another thing to know is to know your personal weaknesses. So I am not a financial person. Numbers are not my thing. I love KPIs and all of that, but I do not like the financial side. And I'm the visionary and the tech person of our company. And so I brought somebody on to join our team that's very analytical, has a CFO background, had a lot of connections in the financial world. And so that was essential for me to be able to end up doing this raise, because I don't come from money. I don't have any friends and family that would have been investing or have the money, and I needed the network. And so I was able to bring on our chief strategy officer, for equity, and she ended up also investing in our company, and helping us to get about half of the fundraise out of the 500K. She was able to bring in her personal connections to get about half of that, which I will forever be grateful for. But some great investors that are really behind our mission here at Allobee. And then the other half, we worked pretty hard for, with both connections locally here in North Carolina, where I'm located, as well as all over the country. We ended up finding a micro VC. So there's pre-seed funds, micro VCs, and angels, which are going to be the ones you're going to want to look for this pre-seed round. And we found a micro VC, Stargazer Ventures, that had actually just started. They're out in Portland, and via a cold email, I got connected to them, and they ended up writing the last 100K check for that round for us. So cold emails work, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But it took a kind of a combination for us to get to the finish line. And I do not know if I would have gotten to the finish line as fast if I had not had the connections that our CSO was able to bring on. So if you're able to partner with somebody that either comes onto your business or is really supportive of your business, or might even want to invest, that can intro you to those angels and micro VCs, that would be the best route that you can go. I know that that's not always an option, so we're going to talk about other ways to do it as well, but that's what my journey was. And what really worked for us. We did have a lot of conversations though still. Not every one of her connections wanted to talk to us or wanted to invest by any means. But it did help us to get those conversations when we were so early. Another thing that I would highly suggest is that you find a really good lawyer that understands either tech or whatever industry you're in, really understands it and can support you with it. So we are a tech company, and so we made sure that we had a really good law firm out on the West Coast that was recommended to me by quite a few founders. And they're very expensive, but they're really great at what they do. And they're really helpful to us to try to have short meetings so that we don't get billed for so much. But they let us not pay our first bill until the raise was over. And that was really helpful to us. And there are lawyers out there that will do that. So I highly suggest finding one that will do that for you, because you want to make sure that you have your terms really solid going into the raise, as well as having your ducks in a row with any, terms of service or whatever it is for your business. And that really helped us to stand out also for the angel investors specifically, and even the micro VC, because we had our ducks in a row. We had a really good lawyer. We had our term sheet. We raised on a convertible note. Oftentimes that first raise is a safe for a convertible note. We decided to go the convertible note route for a few different reasons, which I'm glad to talk about, but we went that route, and that's what we ended up raising on. We raised on a 3 million valuation, but it's a convertible note is a little bit different. You kick the valuation down the road a little bit. So that wasn't as important in that, but that's what we raised on. We had really good legal and support there. And then I reread actually the book Venture Deals, which is super dry, but I reread it before we went into the raise. So I really understood what was going on and how all of the conversations, how they went and what was happening. It gave me definitely a good core information to move forward with conversation with our investors. And then the other component was our financial model. Like I said, not a numbers person. My financial model was hilarious, honestly, before our chief strategy officer came in and helped to support with that. But it's really essential when going into raising, because that's what they're going to ask for. So even if you get to a great pitch, they really like you, that next step is for them to do their due diligence and dive into that financial model. And if you can't prove that you're going to be able to take this company to the next level and make it profitable and move forward with the money, it's going to be hard for them to want to say yes to you. A lot of that financial model is complete assumptions and guesses at this stage, in the pre-seed stage. But it's more that you've thought through it and that you've actually thought about what was going to happen in your business and how it was going to go. So those are my base suggestions for getting started. So that's what really kind of helped us to get ready for that pre-seed round. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about some suggestions that I would, really easy suggestions that happened kind of throughout our raise. So like I mentioned, we started in August and we closed officially in January of 2021, but we started in August of 2020, and we started pitching to people that were more like advisors or, people in the community that maybe potentially invest, but not in our area, but would give us good feedback on what we were talking about and what we were pitching. And that was really good because honestly, they're usually pretty critical or they're pretty criticizing of your pitch, actually. So that was really nice to actually get the really almost harsh feedback right away. Because then we were able to iterate our deck. We were able to get that feedback loop that was happening. It made us think a lot about how we could present our company in a better way, and tell our story in a better way. And so that was really helpful to pitch to a bunch of people beforehand. I think a great place, and I would have done this if I had been a part of Dreamers and Doers before, but find some people that are founders that you could pitch to and get feedback from before you go out and talk to an investor in a more safe space. It's a little less intimidating, and you'll get really good feedback that will help take you kind of to the finish line for this. So that is my biggest suggestion, is start early and pitch to people that are not the investors that you want. Even now I'm raising a 3 million seed round right now, and we are just now reaching out and pitching our dream firms to come on with us. And we started this process at the beginning of February. So a month and a half in, we're just now reaching out to them. But in that time, we've iterated our deck, we've solidified our pitch, we've nailed it down, and we feel really good about it. And so it's a lot more comfortable for us. We've made lots of changes to even our little blurb and our emails and stuff like that. And so I highly suggest doing that at any round that you are in your journey of fundraising. And then the other one is utilize DocSend. It is really great because you can see when they've opened it, how long they looked at your deck. And you can, give different permissions and stuff like that. That's been really helpful. It's easy. You just send them a link, and then you can change your pitch deck at any time and update it. And it's live updates to every link that was ever out there, which is also really nice. So you can keep changing it and updating it as you go. Also, your team can have interaction with it as well. If they're needing to grab a link for somebody, if you're having other people help you with the pitching. And then other things, I know one question was, were you able to raise completely remote, or did you have to go in person? I raised our first round completely remote. We were in the heart of the pandemic in 2020 when we were raising, which was honestly, as a mom, it was the best thing ever because I didn't have to travel for the country pitching, especially being in a more like second, third tier city instead of a main city across the United States. It was honestly was our saving grace to be able to raise. And in this round so far, everything's been remote. Will our very last conversations when we finally, get to the finish line have to be in person? I'm not sure yet. We have about a little over 100 or a little over 1 million committed in this round currently, but we don't have our lead yet. So we'll see. I'll update you. But I'm hopeful that the whole pandemic gave a little bit of leg up for us women to be able to have better access to investors and to pitch people that we normally wouldn't be able to get in front of because we weren't in a major city. So I'm hopeful for that. And if you're in a major city, that's just a leg up for you, honestly. So those are a bunch of things. I have some resources I'm going to give to you because I think that I could talk all day, but if I don't give you something that you can take and use, I'm not being very helpful. So I made a template to track your investor reach outs. It's exactly what I use still. What do we use in our first round, which we're using in our second round. I love you too, sweetie. My little boy came to say hello. But it's exactly what I use. So I'll post it in just a second, but it literally is like name, email, all of that kind of stuff, but also what's their check size? What industry do they focus on? Do you have a connection to them? Can anybody make an intro? It's just a really great way to track it. And then when people say no, you put them in red, because every no is one step closer to a yes. And you need to keep saying that to yourself throughout this whole entire process. Every no is one step closer to a yes. And really like mark those people off. They're red, they're done. And then if people are potentials, they go into yellow, and then everybody else will be green until they're not green anymore. But that is really helpful to lay that all out. And in straight transparency, our first round, I think we did about 100 outreaches in that round. That was about 100. At this round, we're at almost 150 for this round. So it's a lot of people you got to talk to. It's a lot of people you have to look at and vet in your own way. But these resources down below, First Round Capital's Angel List database, as well as Mercury's database and this active investor sheet that I'm going to drop in a second. Those are all fabulous resources to get you moving and get you going and finding people's information. The other thing with that is you can find someone's email very easily if you utilize a resource called seamless.ai, SEAMLESS.ai. You just tap that into, you can use it in LinkedIn. So it's free for up to like 250 people, but you can just tap it into LinkedIn and you can find their emails and you can email them and you can email the partners directly. So that's my little tip for you. It works very well, I must say, especially if you make sure that the lead partner is on the email. They almost always will reply to a female founder, at least to have a conversation or at least look at your pitch deck. So I highly suggest that option. We have to get a little bit more resourceful as females to get in front of people because we might not have those connections that some male founders might have. So I'll drop these resources in just a minute in the chat. And then initial conversation. This is something that I have iterated and learned about, and this works the best. And so your pitch deck is probably going to be longer than this amount of slides. It's going to have to tell a little bit more of a story than what you're going to be able to talk about in a short 30-minute session. You usually only get 30 minutes with an investor. And so it's really hard to get through everything and that time. And you want to make sure that you leave at least 2 to 3 minutes at the end to figure out next steps with them. So I suggest that you start the conversation with like literally really quick, short chit chat, connect, do your research before, just as much as if you were going to write a cover letter, find out who you're talking to on that call. Do you have any connections with them? Do they live in a certain area that you used to live in? Do they have a dog? I don't know, anything that you can connect with them on. One day we were talking to an investor that used to be a professional violinist. And my mom is a musician. And so I just connected on that, but being able to connect on that human level immediately helps to make it a lot better process as you're going through the conversation. But the first thing you want to hit on is your problem and solution, as well as your market size. Market size matters, I think, a lot more in the pre-seed than it does after that, because you've kind of already proven that it's a big enough market if you're moving on. But it is important in doing that market analysis and that market size for your first round, but letting them know what the problem is and what your solution is in a really quick, pithy way, in and out, that you've just let it and then just ask, do you have any questions with that? And then move on. Business model is going to be something you want to be very key, that you're very clear on, because inevitably they care about how you're making money. So make sure they really understand it before you move away from it. And that's something that I did not do a good job of in the early days. We are a managed marketplace. We have multiple revenue streams, including a SaaS model. And I had to get really clear on it, really change our pitch deck like a bazillion times on it. And now we're really clear about it. And now they understand and they want to move forward with us because we're not just a marketplace and we don't just have transactions. The other one is target customer base and impact. So you want to make sure they really understand who your customers are and what that impact is. So for us, our customers are small to medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. And then our target customer for our experts, our freelancers, are women that have left the traditional 9-to-5. So you want to make sure they're very clear on that and who you're impacting. You need to be clear about the geography that you're hitting on. So if you are hitting second and third tier cities, or you're hitting major cities like New York, or whatever your geography is, make sure that's clear. The stage of where you are, this kind of involves traction. Like, has anything been built? Is there a product? Do you have customers? Whatever that is, be very clear about what you've done. Don't leave anything to chance with them, because you've got to be very clear in what you've already done so far. And then you want to let them know how much you're raising and what you plan to use the money for. Make sure that you bucket it in like marketing and growth or engineering or whatever it might be, so they know you've thought about it and you're very clear on where that money is going to go. And then your exit path. So this is something that you don't like want to dwell on too much, like whether you want to go IPO or you want to get acquired or whatever it is, but they need to know, if they're going to invest in you, that you're in it for the long haul, but you plan on making money with it. So just being clear on what that looks like or what your plan is. And then risk and mitigation, get ahead of the risk that they're going to think about for you. One of the risks with our company that people sometimes hit on are, oh, you're a marketplace, you're only getting transactions. Well, actually, we also have a whole SaaS model and expert memberships. And so we really bring that up in the business model. And so we take that risk kind of away from them. And then another risk for us is in the competition space. And we're very clear about that when we're talking about target customers, that we go after small business owners instead of enterprise, which a lot of other marketplaces work towards, and that we're very targeted on that. And so then you're making sure that they feel more comfortable with you and your business and how you want to move forward. And then the last thing is just ask them what next steps are. So you have either a meeting set up, or you know when their partner meeting is, or you know who else needs to be involved in this conversation. And hopefully you can get a second meeting with them, or at least see if you're able to share your financial model next, or whatever it could be. So those are my tips on your conversation and how to kind of like wrap it in and get in and out and be done. Because I think that's really important to know what to do and get in and out with, because 30 minutes goes by really fast. I am almost done. I'm just doing time check. Okay, good. I'm almost done. And then we're going to open up for questions. Also in that conversation, I would ask the investor their preference. You're going to know if you use DocSend whether they looked at your deck or not prior to the conversation. If you feel that you are going to be better without the deck, you might want to go without the deck. If you feel the deck will help you, use the deck. But you can also ask them their preference. I also usually stop after about every 2 slides to make sure that we're on the same page. You can see how they're interacting. This is the joys of the virtual world. As you're watching them, like if they're taking notes, that's a good sign. If they are like nodding or looking at you and making eye contact, great sign. If you see them drifting away in some capacity, you need to rope them back in, or you've lost them. And so it's really important to be paying attention to that body language as things are going. And then if you have time, usually at the beginning, and actually I realized I forgot, the chit chat plus your introduction, who you are, your story, really quickly is important, very important. And then you want to have a question to ask them. So some common questions are, do you have any concerns with my business at this time. You can get a lot of good feedback from that. Or you can ask, how hands-on are they with people that they invest in? Or there's tons of other questions that you could ask, but having a question to them is really good. It's a two-way street. You are just as much interviewing them as they are interviewing you. And then know who you're talking to and what level they are at. Especially if you're going for actual venture capital firms, there's tons of pre-seed firms out there. So know who you're talking to. If you're talking to an associate, what they want to know is very numbers focused, very specific, and they need to make sure that you fit their thesis and that your numbers fit their thesis, or they're not going to take it to the partner meeting on whatever day they do a partner meeting. So you need to make sure you spoon feed them exactly the information that they need to take to the partner meeting. And sometimes you can only get a meeting with an associate. And so you want to make sure you're very clear. So that process that I laid out on the last slide is very important, to make sure you spoon feed them what they need so they can take it to the partner. And then also angels are much more on vision and market size than they are on some of the other elements at pre-seed. So it's really getting that angel investor behind you and supporting you and really liking what you're doing. So that story of who you are, that vision is really important for them to understand. Okay, these are last things, and I'm going to give you this deck and drop all the stuff so you can have it. But one of the key things for us when we're sending out emails, both pre-seed and at the seed round now, is nailing a brief summary for our investors. This is not what I list on our website. It's not a marketing one. It's very intentional for our investors to understand elements of who we are. So they understand who we're attracting. They understand that we have a platform already built that has actually a patent pending with it. They understand that we are doing flexible work and have a women focus, a social impact. They see that we have elements of artificial intelligence built into our platform. And then they also see that we have community memberships and a SaaS model. So that gives them kind of the buzzwords, the key things that they're going to want to look at to be able to have a phone call with you. And then also, we just talk about how much we've already raised, that we had 3x growth over the last year. And then we have a projected revenue of 5 million for this year. So that's what we put together. We iterated on this a lot, and you probably will. But this is the one that has been really helpful for us to get conversations. So I highly suggest nailing that little blurb that you're going to send out. It's also something that you're going to want to send if you need to ask for an introduction from somebody. You're going to want to send them a blurb as well as a forwardable email. So that's my last tip for you. You want to send people an email that they can literally just copy paste send to whoever you want them to make an introduction to for you. If you don't make it simple for them, they are not going to pass it on. So it's really important that you have that in there and you just have an email that's very easy to forward on to anybody, as well as the information of that blurb in there. So that is my ton of advice. I'm going to drop all of those documents that I said I was going to give you in here, and then you can start asking questions. So let me grab those really quick for you so you have them. This is
so good. Thank you for giving us all these details and kind of just demystifying this process, because there's a lot.
There is.
While you were dropping the links, and thank you so much for doing that and creating these resources for us, I'm going to dive into the first question we got. So I'll just start reading it and then we can dive.
That's totally fine.
So Jamie discovered an accelerator after the deadline was due, but a member of their team personally asked her to send the pitch. And then she replied, "Thank you so much for sending your deck and your media kit and for following up. I checked with my team and unfortunately we're at capacity with our current accelerator teams and won't be able to accept you for this cohort. I'm sorry it didn't work out. We wish you nothing but the best and hope we can find a way to work together in the future." And her question is, do you think she should pivot this conversation about the next accelerator, try to get funding, or just see if the company is of any interest, or a combination of all of the above?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And I think this is a great time to talk about accelerators and kind of what can come from that. So I did 2 different accelerators throughout my journey as a founder. One was Founder Gym, which now is in their last cohort and doesn't exist anymore, but they were fabulous. And really taught me a lot about the fundraising process. And then the second one was On Deck Fellows. I'm an On Deck Fellow, and that was really helpful and supportive as well. They both did not take any equity from me. And so I'm really thankful for that, honestly. A lot of the accelerators ask for a lot from you. So I'm seeing down here with Lori King of the terms for 100K, 8%. That's a lot, to be honest, in the early round. And so you want to make sure you really do your research on that accelerator, what they are going, how hands-on they're going to be in the future for you, what doors are they going to open. You need to like interrogate them in some capacity, because there's a lot out there that are not actually very founder friendly. To be honest, I don't know that specific one. I'm glad to look into it for you, but I think that's really important. And then kind of going back to your question, Jamie, is keep the door open. I would definitely ask, like, when's the next, accelerator, and, say, like, depending on my timing and stuff, I'd be interested in being considered for that. It's hard because if usually the accelerators don't operate until like at least a quarter from there, or they only operate twice a year. So it might not work with your timing and what you need. Try to get funding or just see if the company is interested. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they actually also do, besides just their accelerator, if they invest, it would be definitely an option to say, hey, if you also invest, I would be interested in having a conversation. So I think it's definitely good to keep the door open and see. Oh, interested in dogs. Okay, I got you now. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would just ask. Honestly, I think sometimes as women, we don't ask. We just don't make the ask, and the men will make the ask, I can promise you. And so just ask, just put yourself out there and straight up ask at the end of pitches, which this was a little uncomfortable for me at first. I literally like, what are the next steps? How can we get on a call with you? What do we need to do to get this to the partner level? And just am very bold about it. And they respect that and they like that. And so don't just kind of back off, just be very bold about it. What's next? Because you don't want them to waste your time. You don't have time as a founder. So you do not want them to waste your time. And they will waste your time. So another tip, kind of, if you've reached out to these people, you haven't heard from them, follow up 2 or 3 times until they give you an answer, and let them have an out. Go ahead and say to them, it's okay if you say no or pass. I would just like to know if we're gonna, move forward at this time. And they'll let you know. And then you can mark them off as a no, and that's one step closer to a yes. But that's my suggestion.
Amazing. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or drop any questions in the chat and we can tackle them. I thought this question was interesting that came in, is to how to know when you're ready for a pre-seed round.
That's a great question. It's so industry agnostic. So depending on what industry you're in, I would say, and that's the pitch deck too for everybody. I would say that the best indicator is that you have some sort of traction, whether it is customers, like the product has been created, you have something to show for it, even if it's just for a short window, but it's increasing in that short window. that's when it's usually good to go ahead and start raising. I will say though, and I just like to preface this, make sure you really want to raise before you get on the raising wagon, because it is something you can't get off of once you're going. And something you'll have to keep raising basically every year, almost every year. So make sure you definitely want to take that on, or can you bootstrap a little longer and get more traction and more revenue under your belt, before you raise. How did you think about equity liquidation as a founder? Did you have a final ownership number in mind and work backwards from there? I didn't. I knew the whole concept of how you lose each round and kind of how that works. So I started as a solo founder, and I added 2 team members that have equity and like a decent amount of equity on, but I still own 68% of the company, fully, even at this round, even with our first investors. And you basically end up losing about 10% of your company every round. So this seed round will lose 10% of the company, to an investor. But the key with that is to make sure you still keep good board seats. So we have it set up in our terms that whoever is the lead will take a board seat this round, as well as I will take a board seat, and I get to pick one more person to have a board seat. So I plan on picking our chief strategy officer, because she's also an investor and she loves our company and has my back. So we have 2 to 1 in that board already. And I think that a lot of times female founders get kind of screwed on the board seat situation, which will really mess with you down the line. So be very clear about how many board seats you're giving away each round. I know a founder that gave away like 5 in her pre-seed. I didn't give any in my pre-seed. So be really clear about what you give away. There's even, and I don't mean to like doubt any people out there that they're not doing something with good intentions, but advisors are great. You should not have to pay an advisor before you're a little further down the line. And even then, it likely should be an investor that comes on as an advisor as a board seat. And there's a lot of people out there that want to charge female founders to be an advisor. And it's not, I don't think they should be, honestly. There's a lot of amazing advisors out there that will help and support you without taking funding from you. And very few will ask for equity. The ones that do, that's a red flag. So make sure that you're really vetting those people before you bring them on. But that's my suggestion, and take it however you want. And then just kind of like for the liquidation, I mean, you have to think about the future for sure. And understand about how many rounds you're going to go before you might sell. Or if you're planning to go all the way to the end. But just be really mindful about that term sheet, and make sure you have a good legal team that's there to make sure they're putting your interests at the forefront, and you come with that term sheet before anybody can tell you what that term sheet should be. We have a pretty decent valuation for this round, because I don't want to lose very much of my company. Will we get pushback? Maybe. We haven't yet, and we have $1 million committed. So just stick with what you think and try to push it through. Why did we do a convertible over a safe? Our investors that we brought on originally were pretty in-depth financial people. And so a convertible note was more attractive to them, because a convertible note converts within 24 months. And so we're not at our 24 months yet, but at 24 months, if you haven't made any more money and raised any more, you technically could potentially have to give it back. But that's really rare that anybody would ask you for that. But it has to have a convertible experience, or something has to happen, which was basically another raise for it to convert. And at the time of conversion, those investors get a 15% discount usually on going into the next round, which is very appealing for an investor at an early stage. So it's usually more likely they're going to say yes to that. than a safe necessarily, because they see the potential. Safes are, a lot of men can get away with the safe. Sometimes it's hard unless you are in the YC world or have, really had a lot of credibility behind you as a founder, to get away sometimes with the safe, because people want to see a conversion. They want to see that they can get into the next round if you're doing well. And that was appealing to our investors, as well as we built into our round this time, and something to keep in mind for the future, to kind of say another thank you to those investors that took a chance on us in round one, that if they up their amount to at least 100K, they can be considered a major investor going forward, which gives them better benefits as you continue to raise. So that helped us get our initial little amount for this round of just our current investors giving a little bit more. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Liza had a question.
Yeah.
A lot of advisors have told us that angel investors don't care so much about a financial plan in the pre-seed round because they know you're still figuring it out and probably won't be profitable in the first round anyway. Have you found that to be true? Is it enough to show them your budget and expectations for your roadmap?
It was not true in my case. So I actually tried to raise before I brought on our chief strategy officer, and it was a disaster. To be honest, I did not have all my ducks in a row, and I didn't have that financial model. And especially angel investors, it's their money. They're giving it to you. It's their hard-earned money, and they want to be able to trust that it's going to go somewhere. And a lot of times they are pretty financially cognizant of what should be there. And so them being able to see something and your thoughts and your assumptions behind it are really important. It doesn't need to be like as fleshed out as our financial model is today. But I would definitely, it helped us a lot. I will be honest, like that was like a key thing, and it's still helping us. Like we have a whole data room right now where our financial model is, and like demos and stuff like that. And we just say that to an investor at the end of that call with what's next steps. And we get that next step because they're like, oh, you have a data room. Like, that's really great. It's not hard to put together. It was really easy. But it's just that you've taken that extra step, that you're just showing up in a better light for them. And they're more likely to take you seriously.
Helena was wondering, why do you think that advisors that take equity is a red flag?
If they really believe in what you're doing, they should put some skin in the game and potentially invest. A lot of people board hop or advisor hop with companies. It's just what they do. And so just make sure that you've done your research on them. I think that if it's a person, like, so kind of on the flip side, if it's a person that's really going to show up and even like work part-time for you for equity, and also be a little bit of an advisor, that's kind of how our chief strategy officer started. And then she ended up fully coming onto the team. That is a great situation in my mind. If they're willing to put skin in the game, hours in the game, support you, give you the contacts, like that's good. But if they're just like, I want to be an advisor and I want like 2% equity and they don't have a plan behind it, that's a red flag to me. And we've been approached by a lot of people for that. So that's like a fair warning. Usually when you start talking about raising, people start stepping up.
Shavika was wondering your thoughts on this situation. Vineka has nearly 250K in sales, $400 average order value, etc. We've been advised to do a pre-seed, get a tech partner, feeling the assumption, is this person male, then do a seed. I'm wondering if we should just do a seed round.
You're in a good place in sales. You're not ready to do a seed. So you need to be further along to do a seed. I would say kind of like we were actually kind of on the lower end going into the seed round. Our tech is where a series A would be, but our revenue was not there yet because we built the tech and we didn't have the funding yet until we built it. we were at about almost 600K going into at the very end of last year into this raise. And then we've had a really good quarter 1. But usually their bear is like 500K to go into a seed. So I would say you're probably gonna be turned down by a lot once they find out how much you've made. But you're in a great place for a pre-seed, and you look really good for a pre-seed because you already have revenue and you already have, that established. Now for the tech partner, I have a tech background as a female, and so I really hate when people try to say anything about the male tech founder. I'll be honest, like there's a lot of ways you can go about having a partner in tech that does not have to be you giving away a good portion of your company to a male tech partner that might up and leave you after a certain period of time. Look into alternative options. Can you find a developer team that is here in the States or offshore, and then have a project manager that understands the tech help run it? We at Allobee have helped a lot of, this is what I did prior to Allobee when I was freelancing, but I helped a lot of women get their MVPs out into the world and write their requirements documents and help them offshore the work. And so find people that will help you do that. So you don't have to bring on a tech person, but that you start getting the tech built, or what's going to need to be built by having that in line. But be very careful just about who you start to bring on. I'm glad to help make some connections to technical females that could help be an option for you, or even potential really great tech guys that could come on and partner with you. But definitely do your due diligence. I've heard some really bad stories on that. But yeah, there is a bad assumption. Even as a tech founder, I get a lot of times, so before we hired a CTO, like, where's your technical person? I'm like, right here, thank you. But that happens, so.
Thank you so much. I'm in the middle of fundraising, had so many questions, really appreciate it.
Of course, no, and feel free to ping me after too. I feel like we all have to help support each other and get to the finish line, so I get it.
Thank you.
Yes. And if you found a lawyer that you liked, recommendation.
I love our lawyer. It's Lane Powell. And glad to make an intro. Pat at Lane Powell. They're based out of Seattle. They're fabulous. I do have a few other recommendations I can make too, pending what industry you're in and stuff. But they were great. They didn't make us pay our first bill until the round was raised. It was a very hefty bill then, but we built it into our raise. And it did help us have that credibility with our investors. They really liked that. 2 of our investors are lawyers, and so they were able to give us a lot of help and support over the last year, where we didn't have to go spend money with our legal team, but it has been really nice to have them. And they're really cognizant of early stage founders and female founders. So I've really enjoyed them and liked them.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Getting into this nitty-gritty, I can imagine, is so helpful. And thank you everyone for coming with such great questions. It's always so great to learn alongside everyone. Thank you so much, Brooke, for taking the time to invest in D&D and, share the wealth, pay it forward. We're so grateful for you. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. It's always so great to spend time together on these calls. And Brooke dropped her email in the chat. Thank you so much, Brooke.
Yeah, feel free to the message at any time. And if you need intros, like, I'm really glad that I now can make intros to people. So feel free to send my way, and I'll be glad to try to help if I can.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful for you.